Imagine a weapon that doesn't fire bullets, but ideologies. We sit in darkened theaters, armed with nothing but popcorn, believing the flickering images are harmless fantasies contained in a frame. We view cinema as an escape from reality. But what happens when the fiction refuses to stay on the screen? What happens when a movie prop becomes a global symbol for violent revolution? Or a lowbrow comedy pushes two nuclear powers to the brink of war? Today, we are stripping away the illusion of entertainment to examine the films that crashed violently into the real world. These are not just movies, they are geopolitical catalysts, propaganda engines, and digital declarations of war. To understand the lethal potential of a camera, we must look back to 1915, to a silent film that holds a very grim title. It is the deadliest piece of media ever created in American history. When D.W. Griffith released The Birth of a Nation, he didn't just direct. He actually resurrected a domestic terror organization. The film painted the Ku Klux Klan as valiant saviors of a broken South, while depicting Black Americans with grotesque, animalistic hostility. It was a visual masterpiece of its time, utilizing groundbreaking cinematography to deliver a highly contagious virus of pure racial hatred. The impact was immediate and truly catastrophic. President Woodrow Wilson notoriously screened it inside the White House, allegedly describing it as history, written with lightning. But that lightning, unfortunately, sparked real fires. Before the film's release, the KKK was virtually extinct, a forgotten and pathetic relic of the Civil War. The film served as their ultimate high-budget recruiting commercial, inspired by the heroic, mythic imagery on screen. White men burned crosses and donned white hoods, and they lynched innocent people in the streets. Griffith didn't just reflect the systemic racism of his era. He actively manufactured it, packaging systemic murder as heroic entertainment. The blood of thousands was spilled because a director realized something: manipulate a crowd's emotions in a theater and command their actions. You can command their actions in the real world. But the geopolitical power of cinema isn't limited to ancient history. Fast forward to 2014, when the world witnessed an international crisis, ignited not by a land dispute, but by a stoner comedy. The film was The Interview, a crude and absurdist comedy, featuring two idiot journalists recruited by the CIA. Their mission was to assassinate the supreme leader of North Korea. In Hollywood, it was just a raunchy joke. In Pyongyang, it was perceived as an undeniable act of war. The North Korean government certainly didn't see a comedy. They saw a meticulously funded piece of Western propaganda, designed to humiliate their living deity on a global stage. They threatened merciless retaliation, and most people just laughed it off. People laughed it off until the digital bombs dropped. A sophisticated hacker group infiltrated Sony Pictures. They were heavily linked to North Korean intelligence. They wiped servers and leaked highly confidential executive emails, released unreleased films, and exposed the data of thousands. But the cyber war rapidly escalated into physical terror. The hackers issued a very chilling public threat, warning that theaters showing the film would suffer a terrible fate. A fate similar to the 11th of September. They told audiences to remember that specific date. Panic gripped the United States, and theater chains completely capitulated, pulling the movie from their schedules out of sheer terror. The president had to hold a national press conference. He was addressing a Seth Rogen comedy. Let that sink in. The entire geopolitical landscape and cybersecurity infrastructure were crippled, brought to their knees by a joke about a dictatorial sphincter. It proved that a movie script is a matter of absolute national security. Sometimes, the cinematic spark doesn't come from a creator's intent. It comes from a desperate audience, finding a weapon they deeply need. Kinji Fukasaku released Battle Royale in the year 2000, depicting teenagers forced to slaughter each other on an island. It caused a massive uproar in the Japanese parliament. Lawmakers labeled it a direct threat to national security. Terrified, it would incite actual juvenile terrorism. They tried to ban it, proving that governments are inherently terrified of youth, realizing their own disposability. A decade later, this fear materialized on a massive global scale. The Hunger Games was essentially a slick Hollywood blockbuster about children fighting to the death for entertainment. It became a literal instruction manual for geopolitical defiance. Katniss Everdeen uses a simple three-finger salute in the film, a silent gesture of solidarity and rebellion against a fascist regime. By 2014, reality perfectly mimicked the fiction. Following a military coup in Thailand, pro-democracy protesters adopted it. The three-finger salute became their official symbol of resistance. It wasn't cinematic cosplay, it was a deadly serious political statement. The Thai military government was terrified of this fictional gesture. They strictly banned it, arresting individuals who raised three fingers. The phenomenon soon spread to Myanmar as well. Citizens facing down military rifles raised the exact same cinematic salute. A gesture invented in a Hollywood writer's room became a distress signal. A global distress signal for oppressed populations worldwide, proving that a cinematic symbol can bypass language directly and threaten the heavily armed machinery of a dictatorship. Perhaps the most ironic example is the thriller V for Vendetta. The 2005 film follows a masked anarchist fighting a neo-fascist government. His face is hidden behind the smiling visage of Guy Fawkes. Today, that mask is completely divorced from the movie itself. It has become the universal, undeniable uniform for modern rebellion. Whether it is the hacktivist collective Anonymous taking down corrupt servers, protesters occupying Wall Street, or citizens marching against systemic corruption. In the streets of globally fractured cities, the mask is there. It provides anonymity, unity, and a terrifying psychological edge. But here lies the ultimate, cynical punchline of the film industry. The mask itself is actually a copyrighted property. For years, every time an anti-capitalist protester bought a mask to fight the systemic greed of the 1%, a percentage of that sale went directly into the pockets of Time Warner, one of the largest media conglomerates on the planet. A massive multi-billion-dollar corporation was quite literally funding its quarterly profits through the merchandising of global anarchy. We like to believe that movies end when the lights come up, and when the credits finally begin to roll. We convince ourselves that the violence and rebellion are safely locked away inside the projector booth. But the truth is far more terrifying, honestly. Cinema is an incubator. It doesn't just reflect the world. It actively shapes it, arms it, and sets it on fire. Next time you watch a film, pay close attention. Look at what the director is planting in your mind. Because once an idea escapes the screen, there is no script. There is no director, and there is no safety net. The camera is not a mirror, it is a loaded weapon, and it is pointed directly at reality.